record button, and I want to double check for myself. Yep, it looks like we're recording to the cloud. So good morning, everyone, and welcome. It's so exciting to see all the interest that we have in Bounce Back for Classroom and STAR. We're hoping that throughout today, that one little hour that we have together, we'll be able to provide you with some information, maybe answer some questions, and it will help you determine whether or not your school would be a good fit for piloting either Bounce Back for Classrooms or STAR. My name is Debra Klemann. I'm the clinical consultant for the National Native Children's Trauma Center, housed at the University of Montana. I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor, and it's often my job at the center to help bridge mental health and education. Even though I work for the University of Montana, I also have a private practice in Kalispell, and that's where I'm calling you from today. So welcome. I'll let Amy introduce herself, and I wish we had time to introduce everyone. I would just really appreciate your interest and hope to get to know you better as this process goes on.
Thanks, Deb. Good morning, everyone. My name is Amy Foster Wolferman, also with the Trauma Center, and I am just excited about this work. My background is in teaching and special education, and so have worked in the areas of kind of working with prevention and intervention programs, positive behavioral interventions and supports, bullying prevention, suicide intervention, and then the trauma work just really helped put everything together, as a teacher and as a human being, seeing a lot of behaviors through the lens of trauma was really helpful. And so I've been working trying to support schools in becoming more trauma informed overall. And we'll talk a little bit about the big picture of that shortly, but I'm very enthusiastic about this work, and we just can't wait for it to be out and being utilized and helping kids. So, thank you. Oh, this is me, right? Yeah, okay. So here we go. Agenda this morning, we're going to overview the Bounce Back for Classrooms program or curriculum, and also the Students Trauma and Resiliency, STAR. The Bounce Back for Classrooms is for elementary ages 2nd through 5th grade, and STAR is for middle and high school. But they're very, very similar, just for different age groups. We're going to look at how the big picture of how these can fit into a more trauma-informed system. We did a little crosswalk with some of the Washington State standards around social emotional learning, and we'll look at that. We'll talk about the pilot site requirements and next steps, and give you save time for questions and answers. And do feel free to put any comments or questions in the chat as well, because we can, if we can't get through everything today and don't get to the questions, we can follow up with them, but we should be able to. All right, next slide. Okay. So just thinking about, I just want to start off by talking about how we first started this work in schools. And we were utilizing a specific intervention called cognitive behavioral intervention for trauma in schools. And we were doing this along with others across this network, the National Child Traumatic Stress Network, as a way to support specific children and youth who've been impacted by trauma. Because we know that trauma can negatively impact the ability for students to learning and overall school performance, and as well as their social emotional well-being, and that a lot of our students just don't have access to mental health care outside of the school. So being in the school setting, they're kind of a captive audience, and it's a really good way to meet the needs and reach students who need it. So CBITS was helpful in that way. It's evidence-based, it's a small group treatment model, and it targets students who've both experienced trauma and who are also experiencing symptoms as a result of that trauma. And it teaches self-awareness and coping strategies. And although the treatment was, we found to be effective in reducing symptoms, we were finding that there were far more students with traumatic stress that can actually be treated with a targeted small group intervention in a school setting. In some cases, over 40 or 70% of student population had experienced trauma and were experiencing symptoms. So we needed to figure out a way to reach more students. So Deb here developed a non-therapeutic social emotional learning curriculum based on components of cognitive behavioral therapy, targeting skills such as emotion identification, self-regulation, those that are often impacted by trauma, that could be delivered in a classroom setting without a mental health professional. And so this became STAR, Students, Trauma, and Resiliency. And then not too many years later, the developers of CBITS created Bounce Back, which is similar to CBITS, but it's for elementary age students. So we took the same approach with that intervention, knowing we needed to reach more students than just these small group therapeutic interventions, and created Bounce Back for classrooms that teachers could implement, and other caring adults. So big picture, in addition to these group-based interventions and these universally applied social emotional learning curriculum that are trauma-focused, we encourage looking at systems-wide trauma-informed change, looking at policies and procedures, trauma-informed policies, adopting trauma-informed discipline strategies, teaching all staff about the impacts of trauma on different domains, emotions, behaviors, relationships, social skills, and how that manifests in the school, strategies for de-escalation, just to name a few of the trauma-informed policies or practices that we are working with schools to implement. So just some of the basics. And we're happy to talk with you more at some point if you're interested in our trauma resilient schools work. Next slide, please. And we know that a lot of you are involved in system-wide change, maybe utilizing a multi-tiered system of support of some type. Maybe it's MTSS or PBIS or RTI, but we find that this is a very helpful structure to embed, implement, support trauma-informed practices, curricula, interventions in the school setting. So we're going to be reviewing these two curricula, and they're very much designed as universal social skills curricula. And we're going to talk a little bit later about how these actually align with your Washington State educational social emotional learning standards. Okay, next slide, please. And just to say that we do hope that this, especially if you're doing this kind of work already, that it's not one more thing to add to your plate, but it aligns nicely with what you're already doing. So then we also want to mention that even though the two curriculum were designed as Tier 1 social emotional learning curricula, they can also be applied at a Tier 2 or 3 level, depending on how you use it. So you may, for example, teach all students in an elementary school the Bounce Back for Classrooms curriculum, but then some kids might need a little extra support with those skills to learn and practice those skills. So you might have a small group, more intensive social skills instruction Tier 2 group, and that's where you might just be providing a little extra practice with those skills. So it really depends on how you use it. And then we do have the definition of social emotional learning here as defined by the Collaborative for Academic Social Emotional Learning, or CASEL, which is that SEL is the process by which children and adults understand and manage emotions, set and achieve positive goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain positive relationships, and make responsible decisions. So we know it's difficult for students to learn if they're struggling socially and emotionally, right? So we want to support them in being able to adopt these skills. And that's really what these curricula are designed to do. Teach students social and emotional skills that are good for all youth, but especially important for those who've been impacted by trauma. All right.
Okay, well, we're going to offer a little bit of an overview of both Bounce Back for Classrooms and STAR. Boy, it's hard to do in a very short amount of time, but we do want to give you a little bit of a snapshot of what the curricula look like. So as Amy said, Bounce Back for Classrooms was adapted from Bounce Back and Cognitive Behavioral Intervention for Schools. And these are evidence-based clinical interventions based upon cognitive behavioral therapy. We decided that it would make a lot of sense to teach the skills. Like the CBT is very skill driven. And so it really lends itself to social emotional learning. And so we took out some of the vulnerability pieces. So there's not a lot of opportunity for self-disclosure. It's more psychoeducation and skill building. And so it's designed to be used in the classroom and hopefully by classroom teachers, school counselors, any professionals that work with children. I think it would make good sense to co-facilitate if possible. It's nice to have two people lead, and because it's social emotional learning, it's always good to have an extra set of ears and eyes on the students to kind of assess how they're doing. Bounce Back for Classrooms is 12 lesson plans. The lesson plans are between 45 and 50 minutes. We did create it so that there are skills to focus on. So each lesson has between 1 and 3 skills. And because of that, it might lend itself to being broken up if needed. So for instance, if we didn't have a full 50 minutes, you can maybe address the first skill in that lesson and then move on to the second and the next opportunity. Each lesson does build upon the previous, it's skill building. So it's best if students can be present for the entirety of the curriculum. And we have designed the lessons so that here's the cover sheet that explains the objectives and what you'll need. And it also is like a quick glance so that you can see the skills that will be in the lesson. And then the lesson follows the format. First, we explain the skill to the students, right? And then we demonstrate the skill in class. And then we have the students practice the skill. And then there's the transfer of learning at the end of each lesson, which kind of brings the skills together. So that's the format that we followed. We did look at other social emotional learning curricula to help us, decide what would be a nice and helpful format. So here are some of the goals of Bounce Back. So we're really hoping to increase coping strategies. Bounce Back for Classrooms could be helpful for all students, but it's especially helpful for students who suffer from trauma. And that's the second piece of that slide, is we're hoping to decrease some of the effects of trauma. So some of those coping strategies that we're focusing on is just that understanding of stress and trauma and how it impacts students. We're helping students to identify what's self-care. How can I take care of myself in difficult times or because I'm experiencing difficult emotions? We teach relaxation skills. We focus on self-regulation, which involves feelings identification, expression, and modulation. It's really important, I think, for students to learn that concept of reaching out, right? The resiliency, students who are resilient are resourceful. Like they know where to go and reach out for help. And that's something that we're building in Bounce Back for Classrooms. Also problem solving, we're gonna hopefully increase that skill of problem solving by taking them through a process of thinking before acting. Will help students when it comes to identifying thoughts that are helpful. Oftentimes students who've suffered trauma, they have some thinking errors, kind of default thoughts that are anxiety provoking or unhelpful. And in increasing all these coping strategies, like the end result is, of course, we have a healthier human being, but we're also hoping to improve their learning readiness. So when kids have coping strategies, when they feel safe, when they feel supported, they're going to be in a much better position to learn. some of those effects of trauma that we're hoping to mitigate, right, decrease, is feelings of isolation. So if we bring things to the table and talk about it and envelop kids in resources, they're going to feel less isolated. Anxiety levels, it's hard to understand this as an adult, but early on, if we can teach people to manage anxiety, they're going to be a much healthier person. False alarms, oftentimes kids who have suffered a trauma because their body's danger response has gone off so many times that what can be happening is in the current moment, they might be picking up on danger when danger doesn't really exist. And when they pick up on that danger, they kind of have a false alarm. So that body will go into an increased sense of hyperarousal, which makes them more reactive. So if we can learn about false alarms and how to manage that, that alarm system, the kids will improve. We hope to decrease impulsivity, decrease negative thinking, and decrease that hypervigilance, that's really connected to the false alarm that I was talking about earlier. So what we decided to do for Bounce Back for Classrooms, just to give you a smattering of what it might look like, is really focus on the skills that we're teaching in each lesson. And we'll go over the skills, and I'll also try to remember to throw in some of the activities that we do with those skills. So in lesson 1, we're going to be helping children understand the body's danger response. That's a fight, flight, freeze response, and also help them understand common reactions of stress and trauma. We have a couple things that we're going to do in that session to help illustrate learning, and one is called a fight, flight, freeze game. After they understand how that feels in the body, we'll do a game to help them understand those responses, and we read a book during this lesson called A Horrible Thing Happened. And this is a little story about a cartoon character who experienced a trauma and all the common reactions that happen as a result. And then we're going to weave that together by introducing that concept of feeling better. Like, what can we do to feel better? And the transfer of learning is a worksheet called What I Can Do to Feel Better. And in the second half of that slide, we have some illustrations from our handout that goes along with lesson number 1. If you have questions like per lesson, you could put it in the chat box or save it at the end for our question and answer. So lesson 2 is all about connecting feelings, thoughts, and actions. And the feelings, thoughts, and actions triangle will really serve as the crux of understanding for this curriculum. Our feelings, thoughts, and behaviors are all connected in a triangle. If we alter one, we can alter the other two, right? And so a lot of this curriculum is going to be based on tweaking thoughts, identifying healthy actions, and feelings identification. So the first step in understanding this triangle is just to define those feelings, thoughts, and actions and understand the connection between the three. And so this is about lesson 2. A lot of the activities we do are filling in the triangle, helping kids identify what their feelings are, what their thoughts are, and what their actions are, defining and differentiating between the three. And then they'll be given multiple scenarios where they guess, oh, this might be how so-and-so is thinking, this might be how they're feeling, and this is how they're acting. So a lot of repetition to help them understand that interconnectedness. And then we do have a comment So we were going to do some crosswalk. The question is the curriculum organized by competency? We're going to do some crosswalk to share how Bounce Back for Classrooms might coincide with some of the Washington standards. But the curriculum is organized by skill building, the order that is necessary to kind of achieve the results of the increasing coping strategies and decreasing effects of trauma. So lesson 3 is all about identifying feelings. So we want to help kids identify feelings in themselves, feelings in others. Some of the activities that we do in this lesson to help them achieve that, we do a feelings charade. So that's where they either act out or try to get their teammates to identify what feeling they're using or acting out. We do a feelings grab bag, which is where we have some pictures in a hat where kids pick out a picture and try to guess what that feeling is. We have them do some work with partners to try and pick up on the emotion level of their neighbor based upon facial expression. And at the end, the kids create a feelings poster of all the emotions that they learned. Let's see. Oh, and we also have, I believe in this lesson, we read a book on feelings. And it's Today I Feel Silly. Is that what is the name of the book, Amy? There's like multiple ones that we could use. You're on mute.
I'm sorry, I can't remember the name either. It's such a fun book though. It's been a while since we've done this. Yeah, it'll come. I'll look for it.
Okay. So that is, we'll move on to lesson 2. So lesson 2, lesson 4. In lesson 3, it's all about feelings, identifying feelings, because to teach self-regulation, we first need kids to identify their emotions, right? And the next step is to measure emotions. So we don't necessarily, as human beings, we don't necessarily always have control over our emotions, but we have agency over our emotions and energy, and we can shift, like we can do things or think about things in a way to shift those feelings and energy. And lesson 4 talks a little bit more about energy, like how certain feelings create energy in our body. And we'll do an activity of identifying where emotions come from in the body. And then we'll help kids measure their emotions using the thermometer that we have up on screen, right? This is really important for all emotions, but especially important to, I think, for anger and anxiety, or nervousness, right? If we can determine where we are on a scale of 1 to 10, then we know what to do, right? So let's say we have a child who's super, super anxious, very dysregulated, right? If we can help that child understand that their feelings thermometer is very high, then they can employ some of those down-regulating strategies that we're going to be learning about in Bounce Back. Also, sometimes children check out, especially children who have suffered a trauma, and they can be shut down. Even -1 we have is kind of numbing out, right? Checking out, and I'm sure you've worked with students like that. So if we could do a little bit of check-in, we can also learn, hey, there are ways to increase energy and increase focus and engagement. So lesson 4 is about measuring those emotions and then linking them to some activities that will help. So we'll get into that, I believe, in lesson 5, some more strategies about what will help modulate feelings and energy up and down. So then the transfer of learning is we're going to ask kids to think about feelings they've had, try to identify why they've had those feelings, measure that feeling, and then identify where in the body they're feeling it. Oh, thank you, Amy. It's The Way I Feel is the book that we're using. And there are many other books that address emotions, and I'm sure you all have seen them. This is the one that I like the best, but there are so many. And the I Feel Silly is another one, but it's not the one we landed on as far as recommending for measuring, for identifying feelings. Sometimes my arrow works and other times it does not want to. Okay, so lesson 5 is regulating feelings. So it's not by accident that we're spending a lot of time on emotions in this curriculum. And I believe wholeheartedly that it's a lifelong skill to help kids understand and regulate their emotion. But again, it's especially helpful for kids who have suffered a trauma because, often they have that hyperarousal in their body. They don't quite understand where it's coming from. If we can help them calm, so this is really also where feelings and actions are linked. If we can teach them relaxation, if we calm the body, it decreases our feelings thermometer, right? And so we spend a lot of time in the curriculum practicing down-regulating activities, relaxation, and re-practicing those relaxation skills. So in the lesson 5, we're going to focus on some of those relaxation skills. And the first one is belly breathing. We have a picture. Again, we have some diagrams and handouts to help kids understand how to do this. Just as a side note, we really did given feedback from other educators to use as many illustrations and pictures as possible to help teach these concepts. And you can see this girl in the illustration, she's starting that belly breathing, right? And so it's a belly breath, it's a diaphragmatic breath, right? If you can feel your belly or diaphragm move up. So it's a deep breath in, hold, and then let go. So we'll be teaching kids this art of belly breathing. Another skill that we'll be focusing on is a progressive muscle relaxation. Progressive muscle relaxation has been around for a very long time. Developed way back in like the 1930s by a physician to help his clients, to help his patients combat disease, because he understood the connection between relaxation, having a relaxed body and mind, and a healthy immune system. And relaxation is just the tightening and releasing of muscles. And we have developed one that we're hoping works with kids. And so I'm going to take you through just a couple of our progressive relaxation stretches that we're going to work with. So I want everyone to pretend that they have 2 lemons in their hands, and they're going to squeeze those lemons really hard, right? And when you're squeezing the lemons really hard, you can feel the tension move up your arms and forearms, up into your shoulders. Squeeze the lemons as hard as you can, and then let those lemons go and shake out your arms. Okay. All right. There's also the turtle. So let's pretend you're sitting on a nice warm rock, relaxing, and here comes danger. So you got to put your head into your shell. Oh, you got to stay there for a few minutes, and then the danger subsided and you can come out. So it's taking kids through that process of progressive relaxation, using some like fun imagery to help them out. And at the end, the kind of transfer of learning that brings it all together is journaling about when they might practice these skills. Okay. So then the next step is to identify thoughts, right? And how they impact. So that we're going to understand thoughts, and then we're going to understand the link between feelings, thoughts, and actions. And then the transfer of learning is for kids just to kind of practice writing down their thoughts. And I put this illustration up. It's from our it's from the curriculum because I think it best demonstrates what we're going to be learning about in lesson 6, right? So we all have thoughts, ideas, memories, opinions. Those are our thoughts, and they can really impact our emotion. So if we were to look at this illustration, here's a boy and his father fishing. And the father is like envisioning in his head, like this peaceful, nice fish that they're going to get. Whereas the little boy sees a shark, right? And we can talk about with kids, like which of these thoughts is most helpful? Which is most accurate? How does the thought of seeing that shark, I mean, if you were thinking there was a shark in the water, how might you be feeling? And so in lesson 6, it's a precursor to lesson 7. So lesson 6 is all about learning about thoughts. And in lesson 7, kids will learn how to alter those thoughts to be more helpful. And then I think, Amy, you were going to
Yes.
go over lesson 7. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you might want to look in the chat box too, there's some questions, and we're just to answer Bob's question. We're just going through the bounce back for classrooms, and STAR will be next. So you're right on time. And the intention is it's not to replace any current SEL programs. It's really for Madeline's question to see where it aligns. It could be a supplement to what you're already teaching. And I would say that would be a matter of examining, what the 6 standards that Anna had mentioned, and examining what your current SEL targets and what might be missing, and then knowing that this particular curriculum and STAR are specific to those who've been impacted by trauma. And if that's something that's missing in what you're already doing, you may want to add it, but definitely not intended to replace. All right, great. Okay. So lesson 7, okay, so this one is all about generating helpful thoughts. So they've just learned in the last lesson about identifying thoughts and differentiating between them, or actually that's what we're getting into now, excuse me. So there's 3 skills here. So how to identify and distinguish between a helpful thought and an unhelpful thought, how to generate helpful thoughts. We also call them courage thoughts. And then how to apply these skills in a real world setting. And that's what those transfer of learning closing activities are all about. So to teach the concepts, we explain, helpful thoughts give us power to do our best and to feel better, whereas unhelpful thoughts can get in the way of us doing what we want to do and can make us feel bad. We continue using cartoon scenarios that we started in the last lesson to demonstrate. We have a boy who's up at the board doing math problems. He has a negative thought in his mind, and we talk about how that negative thought might affect the way he feels and in his actions. He's anxious, and he says, I want to go to the nurse's office. So we discuss those impacts. We share a number of different cartoon scenarios. And then we work on in situations. So if we have a negative thought here, how can we turn that around into a more helpful thought? So they get practice generating helpful thoughts or combating negative thoughts, as we talk about in STAR. And then we have an activity called the double bubble worksheet where they might think about situations that they've been in where they might have had a negative thought and they put that in one bubble, and then in the other bubble, they put in a more helpful thought. So lesson 8, please. Next slide. And then 8 is, oh, one too many.
Sorry about that.
No problem. 8 is review and coping skills practice. And so in this lesson, we teach an additional self-regulation strategy. So we had the breathing and the muscle relaxation. Now this is the body scan. And we set up a treasure hunt game to review all of the skills that they've been working on so far. So the body scan, it's a visualization and muscle relaxation technique. So you pretend, visualize that you have a magic wand and you wave it over your whole body, starting from the head, moving slowly down to the toes, and wherever the magic wand hovers, the body muscles relax. So then we, demonstrate that and practice. And then the treasure hunt is, you're probably familiar with how a treasure hunt works, but setting up about 8 stations, having clue cards for your small groups to find the station, look for a poster with pictures about feelings, find a picture of a brave lion, which is the courage card. And then when they get to the station, there's an activity card, and that's where they practice the skill. So maybe it's taking 5 deep belly breaths or naming an emotion on a poster, practicing muscle relaxation. So, and then then we do have the treasure chest. Of course, we have trinkets and toys in there. So review and practice is really important with all of these skills, right? We teach it once, but we really need to be following up and continuously teaching as much as we can and reinforcing what they've learned. Lesson 9 is building support and connection. So knowing how and when and with whom to reach out safely to for help. That can be challenging, especially for those who've been hurt by adults. So in this lesson, we talk about how to identify safe people that we're connected to, how to identify supportive connections in different places where we spend time. So who in our lives can we trust, who we know will help us if we need it? And who might that be when we're in school? Who might that be when we're at the after school program? Who might that be when I'm at my relative's house? So just very tangibly identifying these support people in our lives. We read the story, The Invisible String, to illustrate concepts. And we also talk about community helpers too. So if we, sometimes we might need, maybe in emergency situations, to reach out to the police or 911, or seek the help of a counselor, at this young age. That would be through the help of a trusted adult, a close trusted adult, but they might be able to help talk about things that others that we're connected to don't do so frequently. Counselors have a lot of experience helping others. But so it's really important to tailor this one to local resources and working through that process. Next slide, please. And then lesson 10 is social problem solving. It teaches the skills of identifying coping strategies to regulate feelings and then taking actions. So the main focus is on how our actions impact our thoughts and feelings. So we review a list of actions, such as using your words in a problem situation, generating helpful thoughts, relaxing your body, asking for help, walking away, different suggested actions for solving problems. And then we talk about how when our feelings thermometer might be rising, when we're getting upset or scared or sad, in different scenarios. Maybe a friend is copying our assignment. Another friend told us someone's saying mean things about me behind my back. Maybe I'm worried about something that might happen at home. So then we take these scenarios and select actions that might be helpful in those different situations and do some role plays. And then lesson 11, it's putting it all together. We have an opportunity here to practice using the body scan technique again, because we haven't had as much practice with that particular one. We work on developing a feelings, thoughts, and actions toolbox. So students brainstorm the skills they've learned about in class, and they create this big tools you can use chart. And then we can categorize that by tools that address feelings, tools that address thoughts, and tools that help with actions, addressing actions. So deep breathing and stretching might be an action. Helpful thoughts might go in the thoughts, etc. So then the students play a trivia game based on questions related to the skills they've been learning. Name 3 points on the triangle. And then the transfer of learning, ask students in small groups to rotate between the chart, and then these are the labels of the charts, what I learned in class, my favorite thing about this class, and what I'm going to keep practicing. So, and then they share their answers. And that sets us up for the last lesson, which is final review and celebration. And so they can do, they choose to present their information in skits or PowerPoints or poetry. However, you can get really creative here, and then we celebrate. It's an excellent opportunity to celebrate and give certificates and recognize the work that they've been doing and they're practicing. Phew, we're running out of time, Deb.
Right, yeah. So you'll notice that the goals of students' trauma and resiliency STAR are very similar, because they're based upon those cognitive behavioral therapy components. And so again, as in Bounce Back for Classrooms, we're trying to increase coping strategies, and we're doing this through a way that's psychoeducational, and not clinical. So again, there's not a request for self-disclosure, and we focus on skill building. Those skills are understanding stress, trauma, and loss, increasing self-care, helping them in relaxation techniques. Again, we're going to utilize those support systems, teach them to be resourceful. This age, it's super fun to do to help kids increase their helpful thoughts. We're also going to spend some time on feelings identification. Some of those effects of trauma that we're hoping to decrease or mitigate is the feelings of isolation, help kids manage their anxiety level. We're going to target avoidance in STAR, and avoidance is not doing things because of fear or anxiety, or deciding to avoiding people, places, things that remind them of a trauma or something upsetting. We're going to hope to decrease impulsivity, negative thinking, and hypervigilance. Students' trauma and resiliency was designed for high school, middle school, and high school students. This is much quicker than Bounce Back for Classrooms. It's only 4 lessons. Those lessons are between 50 and 60 minutes based upon the evidence-based principles of cognitive behavioral therapy. This curriculum is also designed to be led by classroom teachers, with the hopes that there could be some cross-facilitation with counselors and maybe other professionals that work with youth. Here in Montana, we're working with one site that utilizes STAR as an after-school programming. Again, it's designed to be educational. I think we went over the last 2. And so in lesson 1, again, there's only 4 lesson plans. So in lesson 1, it's really about providing education on what stress, trauma, and loss, what they are and how they might impact us on a spiritual, cognitive, emotional, and mental level. It really validates experiences and helps students recognize signs of stress. We teach relaxation skills. The relaxation skill that we teach, one of them in STAR, is progressive relaxation, much like in Bounce Back for Classrooms. Again, that's the tightening and loosening of muscle groups, along with deep breathing. Okay. So there's a lot of information shared, and students have some time to do some awareness. So that handouts that are designed to help them identify the impacts of stress and trauma that they're having. At the end, we play a coping skills bingo game. So lesson 1 is really a kind of an introduction on those coping strategies. Lesson 2 is that feelings and thoughts, right? So again, in STAR, we're going to help kids understand that our feelings, thoughts, and behaviors are all connected. And if we alter one, we can alter the other 2. Lesson 2, they do a round robins feelings identification game, where they go around a room and add emotions to a poster. And then we go by and we measure intensity of those emotions. We start the link of thoughts and feelings. We'll put kids in different scenarios and have them identify the various thoughts you can have per scenario and how each of those thoughts invoke different feelings. And then we spend some time on thinking errors, right? So when we say thinking errors, we could think about thoughts that are unhelpful, anxiety provoking, needlessly cause anxiety, right? And so there's a lot of time in lesson 2 spent on combating negative thoughts, that is giving kids the opportunity to argue against their negative thoughts with more positive thoughts. And in doing that, we start kind of the process of decreasing impulsivity because it gives students the chance to think about their actions. So lesson 3 is about facing anxiety. Okay, so it's very common for students who have been suffered a trauma. You know, they have so much anxiety, it might keep them from doing new things. They might have some common fears that keep them from really enjoying their life, whether it's public speaking or having a fear of going to the hospital or to the doctor, or whatever it is. But the goal in this lesson is to explain what avoidance is. And avoidance is when our anxiety or fear keeps us from living our full life. And we'll be working on coping strategies to help us face our anxiety or fear. And we do that in what's called a pyramid method. So it's like baby steps of reaching a goal, right? And along the way, we'll introduce various coping strategies. So we'll take them through scenarios of this pyramid plan of baby steps in facing their fear or anxiety. And the last lesson is about social problem solving and increasing support. In this lesson, we spend some time walking them through social scenarios where you kind of stop and think about all the possible actions and then evaluating the pros and cons of those actions. Much like in Bounce Back, we do an activity where we have resource cards and we help kids identify those people in the community they can go to for support. We also have a circle of trust activity where students identify, you know, who's in their inner circle and how do people get in your inner circle? You know, how is it that you trust folks, and having good boundaries, and then also realizing that there are resources outside that inner circle. Oftentimes kids who have suffered a trauma, you know, sometimes they don't quite understand who or how to trust. And then we plan for continued support. So those are the 2 curriculums in a very, you know, brief shell. And let's see, while I'm going through the pilot requirements, like if Amy, if you have the opportunity to answer some of the questions in the chat. So if you are interested in implementing either of these curricula in your site, we would ask you to attend the live training sessions listed here. We would also ask for your willingness to implement the social emotional learning curriculum in its entirety. You know, some people look at this and they think, oh, you know, bits or pieces would be really helpful for me. And so I'm only going to do bits and pieces. But really, in order to evaluate its efficacy and whether or not it helps students, we need to do it in its entirety and in its order, because it's designed to build upon each skill. We would just ask you to provide, some feedback for each lesson with a little form to fill out. And then we would have two sessions, where we visit over the phone or via Zoom to get more feedback. And then we would request that you administer a pre and post student knowledge survey. It's really about evaluating whether or not the student gained skills or learned from the curriculum. I think that a lot of people joining today, their schools might already have some interest and have already started the process of training staff in trauma awareness. It would be a really good fit for your school if you've already started some trauma-informed system work, or you've trained staff in trauma awareness. This is just throwing it up on screen. We're really trying to keep the facilitator feedback short. I'm hoping that it would only take like 5 minutes to fill out, basic questions about whether or not the student was engaged, how easy was it, what went well, what didn't go well, what are your suggestions? So hoping to keep it kind of quick and simple. These are some of the questions that we have that we would ask students and STAR to think about. We would ask you to administer the evaluation or the survey before they take the class and then after they take the class to see if there was any improvement in an increased understanding or skills. So it really, if you look at it, it really it is connected to those objectives, right? So, I can calm my body when I feel stressed. We're hoping that after they take STAR, they might have an increased sense of being able to do that. Or they can identify when they're having unhelpful thoughts. We're hoping they have an increased sense of being able to do that. The same with the Student Knowledge and Skills Survey of BBC. Just some very basic knowledge. We're just trying to assess for some basic knowledge and acquisition of skills. And we'd be happy to send these to you if you wanted to really look at them further to see if it would be a good match for your school. We're also happy to sign any sort of MOU or data usage agreement so that your school feels comfortable in sharing information. Of course, we're not asking for any student name or demographic or identifying information, I mean to say, and we'll be running this through our IRB board if we decide to do any type of written research, or if we want to publish what we learned from our pilot. Okay, and then I will take the chat if you wanted to talk a little bit about how it relates to Washington standards.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, there's some questions here, Deb, that you might want to add to in the chat. So go for it. And this, what we did a basic highlighting of what the common, where the overlap look to be between the skills and the objectives within the both Bounce Back for Classrooms and STAR with the Washington Social Emotional Learning Standards and the Social Emotional Health Standards under the Washington's Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction. So, and I think Anna mentioned this earlier, the 6 standards, I believe those are, I don't know if those are under the social emotional health standards or the social emotional learning standards, but so what we did was list the key words within those standards and just highlighted them because that's where the language is common. But we can take a deeper review of this, things like identifying a range of feelings and self, on the left here, crosswalk that with regulating emotions, right? And both of those are under the standard of self-awareness. We found just a lot and I color coded it just so you could visually see. Thanks, Anna, SEL standards. So you could visually see what they share, where they have common areas to address. So we are very happy to go through those 6 standards and highlight, name them if that would make it easier. But we don't have our skills that we're working to teach listed under a competency headings. There's the specific skills, but we can certainly see where they do fit. So, but there's only a couple of minutes left, but we might as well use those for questions. And we can certainly, I know I'm available, I believe Deb and I are both available to stay on a little bit longer if other folks would like to. But Deb, do you want to move to the Q&A slide, or maybe the slide that has our contact information, and then we can just have people ask questions?
Yes, so if you are interested in STAR and Bounce Back, if you could please just shoot us an email. I know we've been emailing back and forth. I appreciate that. Let us know if you're interested in Bounce Back for Classroom, STAR, or both. Your school name and contact information of the staff members who might be implementing. After if you express interest, we'll have you sign or look at a letter of intent. That's just to make sure that you're comfortable. We'd ask you to attend the training, and then we'd set up the consultation calls after that. All right, yeah, so Madeline, did you have a question that you wanted to belt out there?
Well, I think you kind of addressed it in the last one. You're not looking for a school-wide implementation, correct?
No.
It could be just select teachers.
It could be select teachers. Even if one person at your school wanted to implement, that's how it starts. If we could have like a champion, people implement and they're comfortable with it, maybe, they're able to mentor and advocate for more teachers to implement.
Okay, and then all teachers who intend to implement have to attend the training, or just one representative from the school?
Any teacher who's planning on implementing should attend the training.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's see. I have Annette.
Yes. I just had a quick question, and maybe Madeline also asked it, because I know, in our school, we're looking at purposeful grade levels. And so is it, if I have 2 5th grade classrooms, could my 2 5th grade teachers participate?
Yes.
Looking for one. Okay.
Yeah, for sure. In fact, I think that would be wonderful. The more teachers that are participating in a school building, then you can work with each other and conceptualize and give feedback. And I think that'd be wonderful.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see, who else? We have a hand raised. Madeline, Vicky?
My question was, could I see the last slide that you guys had put down what you wanted us to do? Thank you.
Okay, let's see. Other hand raises. Okay, I don't see any other hand raises. So am I missing anyone? Madeline?
Madeline.
Sorry, I just have one more. Is there
Of
a
course.
max capacity? Do I need to get on finding a couple core teachers who are willing to implement in case spots get filled?
What you mean, a max capacity for the pilot?
Yeah, like, are you only taking a certain number of teachers to pilot this program? Or do I have a
No.
couple of days to pull together some people? Because I know we have multiple staff members interested,
Yeah,
but I don't want to miss out.
we are taking, we only have room for 15 sites per each curriculum. And we are identifying a site as a school building. So if there are 10 teachers in one school building that want to implement Bounce Back for Classrooms, that's one pilot site.
Thank you.
No maximum.
Okay.
Is there a deadline to get back to you? I have to,
good
my
question.
principal wants, the cop wants to watch your recording. Are you going to send that right away so I can have her watch it?
Yes, so we'll be sending out the recording hopefully by the end of today. If not, then by early tomorrow. Amy and I are hoping to kind of gauge interest meeting again on June 29th, to see where our interest level is. So if you could please get back with us like within a week, that would be super helpful.
Thank you.
And again, to get back with
all your
us,
emails.
to get back with us, we want to go to the end here so that you could see our email and contact information. Shoot us an email if you're interested, give us a call, and we'll keep track of all communication and get back with you as soon as we can.
And there's
Let's
a
see,
question about explaining the letter of intent.
Yeah, well, so with a letter of intent is that we're just asking you to have support from your administrator, and we're just asking you to commit to doing the lessons in their entirety and give feedback. So it's just a little bit of, yeah, I agree to this. Obviously, it's not like a contract written in blood or anything, but we just do want to get a sense of commitment from those facilitating. We could do one per school building. This is of course voluntary. At any point you could choose to quit implementing or choose to quit giving feedback, and there would be no repercussions, negative repercussions whatsoever.
Yeah, and Deborah, your question about being a school counselor implementing lessons in multiple classrooms without the teacher being trained. Yeah, that's fine if that's how your school is set up and you're able to implement. So in a lot of cases, there'll be teachers implementing. In other cases, it might be a counselor implementing. And either way is fine. And often what we do hope though is when you do implement in a classroom, if the teacher could be present so that he or she is learning, getting familiar with the lessons that are being taught and can reinforce the skills. It seems like that can really be helpful to have that somebody on board with you to help reinforce the skills. But yeah, that's allowed for sure. Oh, and Vicky has a question.
So if we did pilot it, would we get like a hard copy of the materials? Would we get electronic? Like how, and how would what kind of materials would we get?
Yeah, well, it would provide you with both electronic and a hard copy. So the electronic may be easier to make handouts, and then you'd also have the visual 100 plus manuscript in your hands to work with as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. So those who are still on the call, we've heard from a couple who have said, yes, we want to pilot. Are there others who haven't shared that yet, who are willing to?
Vicky Bloomfield definitely wants to pilot it.
Okay.
I'm going to contact and see if I can get more teachers on board, but
Great.
And
is that
and I want to do the
that-
elementary one.
Yeah, Annette Campbell for Parkwood and elementary as well.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested at Lakeside Middle School out here in 9 Mile Falls, Washington.
Great.
The STAR program.
STAR, okay.
Have you guys decided whether it's better to do it 4 consecutive weeks in a row, or can you space them out in between? We do a semester-long class, so.
It makes the most sense to me to do one lesson per week.
Yeah,
It gives them
consecutively.
a chance. Yes, yeah, it gives them a chance to practice, and then it doesn't fall off their radar. Yeah.
Yeah, I assumed as much, but I thought I'd ask.
Yeah. And STAR too, we've had teachers decide it was best to break up some of those lesson plans because they just seemed, they could be a better fit doing it within 2 lessons, depending on time allotted.
Yeah, that was another question. So did you find they were fitting within a 50 minutes? Or would it be better to split a couple of them out?
Yeah, it was so that the feedback we got for STAR is lesson 2 is a little lengthy. You might want to do 2 sessions. And we're not at all, we're happy and we hope that you adapt for time frame. As long as you're doing the lessons and in order, please feel free to make it fit your situation.
Well, we're good at doing that. So, and COVID's helped us all do it a whole lot better.
Yes, flexibility.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Gumby.
That's right. Yes.
So Debra Miller, piloting in Bellevue, is that STAR or bounce back for classrooms? And you did CBITS groups before about, okay, bounce back, thank you.
And then Stacy's interested in STAR from Bethel High School. Okay.
Excellent. Well, we went over time. Sorry about that. I know everybody's super busy.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for your interest and time and willingness to hang in here with us through the process. I look forward to meeting you all and spending more time with you. So I'm going to stop the recording and please respond. If you have more questions, please email or call Amy or myself. The recording should be available. I'm going to send the recording out to everyone that I sent the invitation for pilot or STAR. Two, if you do have teachers who you feel like that, they might be interested, you could share the recording with them as well.
Yeah, it looks good. Good looking stuff. Thank you.
Oh,
I'm
thanks,
excited.
Bob. Appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I felt like it was a real need across the network. People have been learning about trauma and
Yeah, I think
bringing
it's a
in
good
different things,
compliment.
but they want to teach, directly teach some skills to students and read
Yep.
all of them. So.
It fits in with all the ACEs training and all the other trauma based, and teachers are getting a big dose of that the last several years. So
Right.
it's a good
Yeah.
fit, I think.
Yeah, oh, good.
We'll give it a try if you'll let us.
Of course.
Thank you. Yeah, we want it to work.
Thank you. Gonna head out.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Bye,
Take
everybody.
care. Hope to talk again soon. Okay, so Amy, I think what I'm going to do is hit stop recording. Do you think that is all I need to do? Do you want to stop recording? If yes, you will receive an email notification when the crowd recording is ready. So that sounds very good.